Incredible blind date revealed. A single dad CEO discovers unexpected love with a poor girl. Jack sat in his sleek office overlooking the bustling streets of the city, a world of glass and steel that felt cold against the warmth of his daughter's laughter. As CEO of a tech startup, he commanded respect and admiration, but inside, he wrestled with an insatiable loneliness. At 38, surrounded by people who envied his success, he felt more like an island than a man. His friends, keen to see him break free from the isolation of high stakes, arranged a blind date. He barely remembered the nervous excitement he had for such things. Life had turned into a monotony of meetings, pitches, and fluctuating stocks. When he walked into the diner, he was hit by a wave of warmth. The aroma of home-cooked meals mingled with the sounds of laughter, creating a vibrant atmosphere that was worlds away from his polished office. There stood Emma, her smile bright amid the cozy chaos. But each laugh around him reflected his own hesitations, anchoring him back to his reality of privilege and expectations. It wasn't just a date, it felt like a rebellion. "Oh, so what's it like being a CEO?" Emma asked, her tone light, but there was an underlying curiosity. He felt the weight of his title pressing upon him, making the atmosphere heavier. "It's demanding," he replied, searching for honesty without revealing too much. Here they were, two strangers tucked under the same fluorescent lights yet separated by wealth, aspirations, and the burdens they carried. His a gilded cage, hers an uphill battle. The conversation stumbled over childhood dreams and aspirations grounded by present struggles. Jack clung to the thought of his daughter waiting at home, the echo of Bella's heart rushing into his mind. He wanted to tell Emma how much he admired her resilience when she spoke about grappling with the weight of responsibility for her younger brother after their family's sudden financial crisis. That sense of authenticity, her true self, was refreshing, something he hadn't felt in years. Among the polished smiles of his elite circle. Before Jack could lean closer, temptation gripped him, taunting his disposition like an unseen adversary. A wolf among sheep, perhaps. Could he really risk his well-being, his status, for this woman who was so unfalteringly real? Should he settle for the world he knew, devoid of challenges, or dive headfirst into the unknown? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Jack's got twisted at every mention of future plans distorted by Emma's present. Just as he thought he could overcome societal judgments, a family crisis forced her out of their tender moment. The pressure mounted. Torn between the expectation of dating someone from his world and the flicker of genuine affection for Emma, Jack could feel the tendrils of anguish wrapping around his chest. His friends would never understand. They'd see Emma as less, a distraction from the game, nothing more than a fleeting whim. But to him, she was a breath of fresh air, a connection he desperately craved. Jack stood before his glass office window, the weight of the city pressing against him, blurring the line between aspiration and acceptance. All that loomed was the unresolved question in his heart: could love thrive, unblemished by the trappings of wealth, and would he have the courage to defy conventions for just a moment of real connection? As he peered into the luminous abyss, the world outside throbbed with life, mirroring the chaos within him, an uncertainty poised to shatter or soar. The next day, Jack found himself in a maelstrom of thoughts that spiraled in and out of focus. He arrived at the office early, before the cacophony of his team filled the space, hoping for moments of solitary clarity. Flickering screens and the scent of fresh coffee dashed against the backdrop of his unresolved emotions, and as he paced in his corner office, the implications of his blind date with Emma loomed over him like a storm cloud ready to break. Decisions curled tight within him, a juxtaposition of stark realities. As much as he craved a genuine connection, he could anticipate the backlash from his world, his colleagues' disdain, his friends' mockery. Yet, the flicker of a thought danced at the edge of his consciousness: chasing away the status quo could illuminate possibilities he had long buried beneath layers of security and expectations that in the meeting that day, while going over projected outcomes and quarterly figures, Jack felt an all-too-familiar heaviness weighing on his shoulders. The chatter about innovations and market shares rang hollow. He chuckled, half-heartedly, at another CEO's joke that landed flat in his mind. Their superficial camaraderie gnawed at him, a reminder of how disconnected he felt from the very people with whom he shared a professional life. Later, as he returned to his desk, he found himself staring at Emma's number saved in his phone. It seemed to pulse, daring him to take action. His heart raced with an unfamiliar sense of urgency. Could he break the cycle of his predetermined existence? The weight of his responsibilities as a father pressed in the safety and comfort he had provided Bella for years. Was he willing to risk their stability for a fleeting thrill, or was what he felt for Emma something real, something that could foster growth for both of them? Moments later, as if drawn by fate's whisper, he picked up his phone and typed a brief message. "Hey, Emma. I hope your day is going well. Would you like to grab coffee sometime?" His pulse surged as he hit send, half expecting a rush of regret. Instead, he felt an unexpected lift, a liberation from the expectations that thrummed in every corner of his life. This felt reckless yet exhilarating. This was new territory. During the lunch hour, Jack was stealthy with his phone, stolen glances at the screen as he pretended to engage in office banter. The anticipation gnawed at him. Had she seen his message? Did she even want to hear from him? Each passing moment stretched like a rubber band, taut and electric. Waiting for something good to materialize, he tapped his fingers anxiously on the table. When his phone finally buzzed, a thrill zipped through him, transforming his anxiety into exhilaration. "Hi, Jack. Coffee sounds great. Let me know when." A smile broke free, spreading warmth through his chest. For a fleeting moment, he allowed himself to dream about what that coffee could bring: a simple connection, a chance to explore vulnerability, and a step away from the gilded cage. But with this excitement came a wave of tension. The path he had just chosen was fraught with uncertainty. What would the future hold when Emma, so grounded in reality, met the pressures of his world? Later that evening, while Bella sketched at the kitchen table, Jack mulled over the choice he had made, feeling the weight of that single decision blossom into endless possibilities. He imagined himself in a moment of honesty with Emma, sharing dreams and fears not just about love, but about life, ambition, and what it meant to truly be seen. Tomorrow would be pivotal. He felt the urgency of that moment. The opportunity to delve deeper into who he was versus who others expected him to be was at stake, woven into the fabric of a simple coffee meeting. As he tucked Bella into bed that night, the notion of love lingered at the forefront of his mind, mingling with excitement and fear. Little did he know that dinner was only the beginning. The stakes were higher than he could have anticipated when Jack had reached out to Emma. The time had come for him to face the true implications of what he had set into motion, the vulnerability of his heart prepared to test every boundary he had built. But could he withstand the pressure when confronted with choices that could shatter his meticulously crafted life? The morning light poured into Jack's office, casting long shadows that flickered across the hardwood floor as he leaned against the desk, contemplating the magnitude of choices ahead. The weight of anticipation thundered in his chest. Today he would meet Emma, and the implications of that coffee were heavier than mere caffeine. He felt different, transformed by his decision to reach out. An ember of defiance flickered within him. No longer was he merely a name on a corporate ladder, an obedient paragon of parental and professional duty. Today, with every tick of the clock, he edged closer to the authentic self he had stifled for too long. As he thumbed through emails, Jack couldn't shake the mix of excitement and apprehension curling in his gut. He didn't just want to know Emma, he craved to explore what else he might discover about himself in her presence. A sudden thought struck him: what if she spoke to him with inspiring honesty? What if he could shed layers of expectation, the branding of a successful CEO, and instead indulge in vulnerability? When the clock struck noon, he felt as if he were straddling two worlds: his mundane corporate existence and the exhilarating possibility of raw human connection. He stood, smoothing down the crisp fabric of his suit, practicing an easy smile. Before departing, Jack checked himself in the mirror. Was he projecting the authority he had mastered over the years, or was he crafting a new dynamic? Beneath the polished exterior lay a reservoir of uncertainty, yet he felt a modicum of courage. Perhaps Emma's authenticity would allow him to shed the boundaries that had long imprisoned him. Arriving at the cafe, snippets of conversation enveloped him, mingling with the rich aroma of coffee and pastries. He spotted Emma settling into a corner table, her expressive eyes scanning the venue as if she were hunting for something profound in the mundane. The sight recalibrated his intentions. "Hey," he greeted, his nervousness dampened by a spark of spontaneity. Their shared laughter felt like a secret clause binding their fates. They started easily, small talk solidifying between them. A humorous exchange about the absurdities of the corporate world quickly shifted toward deeper territories. Jack found himself unwittingly revealing stories about his experiences running a company, but also glimpsing her struggles and dreams. The interplay fascinated him. He was attracted to her resilience, the drive that radiated from her despite the hurdles life had thrown her way, yet, beneath the light conversation, pressing questions loomed large in his mind. Could he carve out a space in his life for her? Would their disparities yield friction or foster balance, a union between stability and adventure? The tension mounted, shadowing the warmth blossoming inside him. Midway through a laugh at one of Jack's self-deprecating corporate misadventures, Emma's gaze turned serious. "What do you really want, Jack?" The question pierced through the casual banter, leaving him momentarily stunned. It was a direct challenge, yet it revealed her fearless pursuit of clarity. He had never expected such frankness, and it unnerved him. What did he want? Had he even taken the time to unpack that question for himself? I want to feel like I'm living, not just existing," he finally confessed, the admission a revelation. It felt like a breach of the wall he kept fortified against all external pressures. Jack searched Emma's eyes, seeking her reaction. In that moment, he understood their coffee meeting was not merely a dalliance but rather a crossroads that could redefine him. This was more than excitement, it was a call for vulnerability, a push toward personal intimacy. Emma leaned in, her expression thoughtful, then tentative. "If you're ready to explore living, it might mean stepping outside your comfort zone. Are you ready for that?" Jack inhaled sharply, the implications setting off a chain reaction in his mind. Yes, he wanted more than this facade. But in relinquishing this self-created cage, would he find liberation or chaos? A nerve within him demanded resolution, his heart thundered as he realized how deep he had allowed his own apathy to permeate, and now, confronted by Emma's sincerity, the stakes felt higher than ever. With every pulse of conversation, he stood on the precipice of exploration and self-discovery. The journey to authenticity was fraught with pitfalls, but perhaps with Emma by his side, he could find the courage to navigate it. As they exchanged smiles, warmth surged through him like an electric current, but his mind circled back to his most pressing dilemma: would this burgeoning connection challenge his responsibilities, or would it serve as the catalyst needed to cultivate a richer life? The question of Jack's readiness lingered between them, a quiet determination building. As the clock ticked toward a close, he glanced at Emma, knowing one thing for certain: everything was about to change, and the real journey had only just begun. As Jack and Emma finished their coffee, the conversation stagnated for a moment, thickening the air with an unspoken tension. Jack could feel the weight of her question lingering like mist after a storm. What did he want? It was a simple inquiry, yet it unraveled layers of complexity he had meticulously constructed over the years. The relentless pursuit of success, recognition, stability, was that all there was? He noticed Emma's fingers fidgeting with her empty cup, an involuntary gesture that belied her usual confidence. She seemed to share his unease, caught in a moment of realization. Jack leaned in closer, emboldened by the vulnerability that coursed between them. "You have to tell me what you see in me," he ventured, surprising himself with the boldness of the request. Emma's brow furrowed slightly. "I see someone who is capable of more, someone who is already on the verge of something extraordinary." Her candidness struck a chord within him, and he felt an unsettling combination of fear and exhilaration. What if she could see the potential he had buried beneath layers of corporate aspiration? With the cafe's bustle retreating into the background, Jack took a risk. "Tell me about the sacrifices you've made," he urged. This time, it was her turn to be surprised, but she gathered herself quickly. "Everything has been hard growing up without much gave me a perspective that's hard to shake off. It taught me the significance of pursuing what lights you up. I refuse to let life pass by in a blur of jobs I can't stand." Her sincerity cut deeper than Jack anticipated, and he wrestled with the revelation of how the cycle of success had knotted him that he could barely articulate the initial alignment over their mismatched backgrounds. Her boldness echoed his dormant dreams. Jack leaned back, unable to shake off the impulse to reconsider his trajectory. Did he want to keep chasing boardroom accolades when there was a broader horizon beckoning? He began to realize this connection was opening a door he had long kept locked. "Emma, I need to know, do you believe in taking leaps?" he asked, the urgency in his voice thickening the atmosphere. "Because that's what I'm afraid of." In a moment, he felt himself teetering on the cusp of a new identity, reborn through shared vulnerability. "Leaps are frightening, but they're where true growth happens," she replied, her voice steady. "You seem ready to embrace change, Jack. Is that why you're even here?" A sudden flush of anxiety swept over him. Yes, his heart was pounding, not just from the fear of failure but from the exhilarating possibility of living fully. He recognized now how those years spent in the boardroom were merely a guise, a mask to the world that was increasingly feeling tight around him. Jack's commitment to his family and career had been unwavering, yet as he sat in front of Emma, acknowledging her as a mirror reflecting back his own longing, new aspirations flickered to life. The urge to break free was palpable, yet so too was the fear. He couldn't allow this emerging connection with Emma, augmented by deeply contrasting realities, to derail his responsibilities. Before he could respond, a shadow crossed his mind. "What about his son?" "I have a son," he said abruptly, the words tumbling out. "I need to think about him. How will this fit?" Emma's expression softened, understanding flooding her features. "Your son is part of this journey too. But what kind of example do you want to set for him? One of complacency or courage?" Jack stared at her, the implications striking hard. Suddenly the answers he sought were buried beneath cascading layers of duty. Yes, he had spent years assembling a life around dependability, but at what cost to happiness his and his son's? With these revelations rushing through him, Jack felt grounded yet wildly unmoored. He couldn't ignore the path that lay before him any longer. The moment was ripe for decision. Did he continue to play it safe or leap into the unknown to nurture a deeper connection, one that promised growth? As their conversation continued, he felt time slip away. But his thoughts raced ahead. What if this connection with Emma was more than a fleeting chance? The notion of expanding his world beyond the rigid confines of expectations tugged at him. No sooner had she asked him to reflect on the kind of father he wanted to be than the cafe door swung open, and a familiar figure stepped inside. Jack's heart sank. It was a colleague from work, one with the power to stir complications in his life, and he wasn't alone. Jack's heart raced. He knew the choice ahead could change everything, and the stakes were just raised to a crescendo. Emma's gaze met his, uncertainty and excitement intertwining between them. Was this the moment he'd finally decide to embrace his evolving identity, or retreat back to the safety zone he'd worked hard to maintain? The gravity of that decision pulsed in the air around them. Jack's mind raced as he caught sight of Greg, his senior manager, flanked by a couple of fellow colleagues who clearly hadn't been privy to important dining etiquette. The trio laughed boisterously, their actions conspicuously drawn to the hustle of the cafe. Jack's pulse quickened as he exchanged glances with Emma, the air between them suddenly fraught with tension. "Seems like we're not alone," he muttered, forcing a smile that felt foreign against the swell of anxiety tightening his chest. The comfort of the intimate discussion he'd been having with Emma felt instantly compromised. Greg's approach was inevitable. Jack braced himself, leaning back in his chair as if to create a barrier around his connection with Emma. The picture of his corporate world collided sharply with this unfamiliar, budding sense of purpose. Could he really let Greg interrupt what he'd started to uncover about himself? "Jack. I didn't know you'd be here," Greg boomed, his jovial presence cracking the atmosphere like lightning. "And who is your lovely companion?" Attempting to rebalance the situation, Jack introduced Emma, trying to keep his voice steady. "This is Emma." He hesitated, glancing at her, searching for the right words that wouldn't dismiss what they had begun to explore. Discussing life changes, Emma interjected, her tone light yet clearly layered with an edge of defiance that intrigued Jack. There was something powerful in the way she was asserting her space amidst the encroaching noise. Greg chuckled, "Ah, life changes. Plenty of that happening in our industry." "So, what are you doing here, Emma?" The question hung in the air, pressing down with heavy condescension. Jack felt the urge to shield Emma from the lingering skepticism lacing Greg's voice. Her response, however, came like a clarion call. "I'm currently exploring paths that inspire me and talking about them with people who matter," she replied, meeting Greg's gaze evenly. Jack's heart swelled with admiration. She was unyielding. "Oh, inspiring, huh? A tough business to be in." "Most people just play it safe," Greg quipped, glancing at Jack with a knowing smile. In that instant, Jack felt a surge of indignation. How had he been characterized in this narrative? "I think playing it safe would be the dangerous choice," Jack found himself saying, the words spilling out unbidden. "Complacency robs us of the chance to grow both personally and professionally." Greg raised an eyebrow, surprised at the conviction in his voice. Jack felt the ground beneath him shift slightly, as though he was asserting a new version of himself, one that did not settle easily into the stale mold of conformity. Returning to Emma, he could see the light in her eyes, a spark that ignited a warmth within him. Their connection pulsed with potential, a reminder that he had a deeper self still emerging. Yet the chatter continued, Greg's purposeful dismissals pulling Jack further back into his previous life, one built on the illusion of stability. He felt torn between the instinct to retreat and the growing desire to venture forth into uncharted territory. As he mentally grappled with his decision, Jack's thoughts turned inward. What kind of path was he carving out for himself or his son? Was he really prepared to embrace the challenge of change, or would he let Greg's presence pull him back into the suffocating realm of the familiar? Across the table, Emma seemed to be reading his internal struggle. "Jack, you have a choice," she whispered, just loud enough for him to hear over the din. "You can let him dictate your narrative, or you can redefine it." The clarity of her words sharpened the decision before him. Jack could feel his resolve solidifying, yet the weight of expectation tugged at him. Suddenly, time seemed to stretch, Greg's laughter faded into the periphery, and all he could hear was Emma's unwavering call for authenticity. He could go back to the embrace of anonymity or boldly step into the light of uncertainty. This was the moment. The moment he could either consolidate his identity or leap into the unknown. But just as realization dawned, a last-minute call from a seatmate at the bar interrupted their conversation, chirping out a directive that made Jack's heart sink with an ominous weight. "Jack, we need you back at the meeting immediately. It's urgent." He felt the walls closing in, but before he could react, Emma's hand reached out, a grounding touch that steadied him. "Don't forget who you are." As Jack looked into her eyes, he knew this wasn't just about him. It was about deciding the example he would set for his son and the future he could forge. The decision loomed large and tangible, poised precariously between safety and the unknown. Would he choose to embrace this exhilarating change, or allow his past to sweep him away once more? The door to a new path was ajar, but he hesitated at the threshold, caught between two worlds. The moment awaited. Jack's mind struggled to comprehend the urgency of the call echoing in his ears. Urgent meant dropping everything, but as he felt Emma's gaze steady upon him, clarity broke through his confusion. This moment could define him, and he was painfully aware of the stakes. With a measured breath, he stood up, attempting to maintain composure against the whirlwind inside him. Greg's laughter faded as he turned to face his boss, a hint of annoyance creeping into his expression. "I'll be right there," Jack said, though he had no idea what the meeting actually entailed. The beat of his heart drummed louder as he processed the weight of his responsibilities, not just as an employee, but as a father. Was he merely a cog in the corporate machinery destined for mediocrity, or could he redefine his path from the inside out? Turning back to Emma, he felt a flicker of something unresolved between them. "I need to go," he said, trying to convey sincerity through the tension. "But I want to talk more. About life changes." The way her expression shifted, softening yet resolute, stirred an unexpected courage within him. "Don't let them drown your voice, Jack." Her words punctuated the air, wrapping around him like a lifeline, and with that, he turned to leave. As he walked through the café, he grappled with varying emotions: excitement, fear, longing. Each step forward felt like a retreat from possibility, yet also a careful dance toward authenticity. Back at the conference room, the atmosphere buzzed with tension. Jack found himself facing three people who dominated the meeting, discussing financial projections, quarterly sales, and margins. He slipped into a seat, feeling the familiar constraints of corporate language squeeze him like a vice. Yet, beneath that pressure, a new conviction began to stir. As the conversation pivoted toward a particularly dry statistical analysis, Jack raised his hand. "I have a thought," he began, his voice unexpectedly steady. Silence engulfed the room, and he caught a glimpse of surprise on Greg's face. "Let us not lose sight of our core values in this numbers game," he continued, instinctively challenging the prevailing narrative. "We have to remember the importance of innovation and connection, not just making quarterly revenue goals." The faces around the table shifted, some intrigued, some skeptical. But Jack saw a spark ignite in Greg's eyes, a flicker of grudging respect. Or a growing challenge. Either way, he felt the thrill of unlocking new potential surged within him. Could he really claim this narrative as his truth? As words flowed forth, he began to weave a narrative that encompassed not just numbers but also emotions, aspirations, and authentic engagement. It was liberating, a manifestation of the change he had been grappling with. The energy pulsing through him was palpable and intoxicating. Perhaps this was how he could align his dual roles as a father and a leader. When the meeting wrapped up, Jack felt lighter. Even as he left the room, Greg caught his arm, leaning in close. "Interesting perspective, Jack. You might want to consider steering your focus in that direction more often." It was an invitation, perhaps an acknowledgement. He wasn't merely surviving anymore, he was reshaping his trajectory. Stepping out of the conference room, he felt the weight of past expectations lift slightly, opening up a horizon of possibilities, but the specter of uncertainty still loomed over him, with Emma's words echoing in his mind. Could he really balance this burgeoning identity with the relentless demands of his corporate life? That evening, after work, he'd have an opportunity to explore that further. Emma had invited him to a local gallery event showcasing young artists, an environment where he could confront the contrast of his world and the one he imagined embracing with her. The decision loomed vast before him again: would he risk further commitment to this new path, or stay mired in the familiar approach of defense and conformity? The air felt electric with tension and expectation as he prepared for a night out that could lead to either a rekindling of his passion or tether him further to the past. Jack inhaled sharply as he reached for his phone and texted Emma. "What time should we meet?" The moment came alive with urgency as he awaited her response. What lay ahead felt filled with both promise and peril. The night could truly represent a turning point or a further entrenchment into chaos. He had stepped into his redefined self. What would he discover next? As Jack stepped into the gallery, the world outside faded into the background. The vibrant colors of the artwork splashed against the white walls, each piece telling a story more complex than the last. Art breathed life into the sterile corporate logic he had left behind, and he felt an immediate tug at his heart. He had been yearning for this, a connection to creativity and emotion, but was he equipped to seize it? Emma was easy to spot, standing by a large abstract painting that seemed to pulse with energy, much like the whirlwind of thoughts swirling inside him. Her presence felt grounding amidst the chaos of his mind, a lighthouse beckoning him toward the shore of genuine expression. "Hey," she said, her voice warm and inviting, a stark contrast to the polished, sterile environment of the conference room. Jack found himself smiling, a genuine reaction that felt foreign yet comforting. "You look great," he managed, his nerves momentarily quieted by her enthusiasm. But even as he stood there, absorbed in her light, he could feel remnants of self-doubt creeping back in. What if he was stepping too far outside his comfort zone? As they wandered through the gallery, Emma animatedly discussed her favorite pieces, her passion spilling over. Jack listened, engrossed in her insights, allowing himself to feel the wall he had meticulously constructed around his professional life begin to crumble. Each piece sparked a conversation about life, aspirations, and the resilience of the human spirit. Jack grappled with the dissonance between the artist's visions and his own corporate struggles. "Art has the power to capture what we feel but cannot express," Emma said, glancing at him with those piercing eyes that seemed to see right through him. Was he expressing anything at all in his life? Or merely existing? "Funny you say that," Jack replied, but internally, he hesitated. Just a few hours ago, he had emerged from that tension-laden meeting, seizing a moment to voice his thoughts. Yet now, in this intimate setting, he grappled with whether he could remain as bold outside the boardroom as he had been within it. He paused, searching for authenticity, trying to voice my thoughts more at work. "It feels liberating." "Good," she said, affirming his effort with a nod. "Keep pushing. You know it's okay to step out of those rigid expectations, right?" Jack looked at her and realized she meant more than just the corporate norms. She was urging him toward a whole new way of being. The notion sent a ripple of unnameable fear through him. Could he truly shed the skin that had cloaked him for years? "Do you ever feel trapped?" he asked, unable to hold back the question any longer. "Every day," Emma admitted, her expression shifting to one of earnestness. "But I also believe we have the ability to redefine what the cage looks like. It's about finding those moments that remind us of who we are." In that moment, Jack felt the intensity of his journey crystallize. This night, this conversation, it was not merely about art but an invitation to explore the creativity within his own life. Was he brave enough to embrace change? As they moved to another exhibit, a collection of portraits that seemed to radiate vulnerability, Jack caught a glimpse of a familiar feeling rising within him: possibility. It was electrifying, yet intimidating. But just as he began to wrap his mind around this emerging clarity, a familiar face appeared at the gallery entrance. It was Greg, with a few other colleagues, surrounding him like a guard at the gates. The bold step he thought he'd taken felt suddenly undermined by the sudden juxtaposition of his two worlds. Jack's pulse quickened as he stood between the warmth of Emma's encouragement and the cold familiarity of his corporate life. He could feel the impending confrontation, the chance to reconcile or revert. In that moment of indecision, he realized there was no turning back. He had once again become the architect of his own narrative. Would he engage with Greg, reinvest in corporate expectations, or stand firm with the vibrancy of his authentic self alongside Emma? The stakes had never been higher. But that was the journey he chose. The choice was not just about office priorities, it was about life and love, aspirations and authenticity. With a resolute breath, Jack turned back to Emma, their gazes locking. "Let us embrace this moment together," he said, feeling something flicker to life within him that he had almost forgotten existed. And as he prepared to confront whichever path awaited him, Jack knew the real battle lay in deciding what voice he would allow to define him from now on. Would he muster the courage to break his old molds, or would he slip back into comfort? He felt ready to discover the answer. As Jack stood at the brink of confrontation, he felt the electric tension of the moment envelop him. Greg's presence felt like an anchor pulling him back into the deep waters of his corporate world, yet the light emanating from Emma urged him to float toward uncharted territories. She shifted slightly, positioning herself as a supportive bubble against the encroaching familiarity of his colleagues. Jack took a deep breath, centering himself. "I think we should greet them," he said, searching for a semblance of assurance. But doubt quickly shadowed his conviction as he caught Greg's approving smirk. It was infuriatingly familiar, a reminder of the sharp edicts Greg enforced in the office about behavioral norms, productivity, and most critically conformity. Of course, Emma said, the encouragement in her voice a reminder of his newfound purpose. Despite lingering fears, Jack felt the embers of his earlier resolve reignite. "Hey, Jack. Didn't he expect to see you here?" Greg called out, a confident swagger in his step as he approached, flanked by two associates who seemed more like spectators to his performance than supporters. "Checking out the latest creativity trends?" "Interesting choice." Jack clenched his fists at his sides. Linguistically, Greg's words danced on easy irony, but the subtext stung. He felt an unfamiliar warmth rising within, a mixture of determination and indignation. No longer did he want to be the passive participant in someone else's narrative. "I actually find a lot of value in what art exposes about ourselves," Jack replied, his tone measured but firm. "I think it's a critical part of understanding who we are and how we work." At his side, Emma nodded approvingly, and for a fleeting moment, Jack glimpsed appreciation in her eyes. "Right," Greg said, feigning indifference. Yet curiosity flashed across his face, betraying an unasked question: could this be the Jack whom he only dismissed before? "Well, just remember, in the end, results matter more than sentiment." Jack felt a fire sparking inside him. He looked at Emma, and silently shared a moment that spoke volumes, a connection that transcended the sterile definitions of success that Greg proudly sported. "Results can stem from a place of genuine understanding, Greg," Jack replied, a steadiness in his voice that he hadn't felt in a long while. "I've been exploring the idea that creativity can push us towards better outcomes rather than just numbers on a spreadsheet." The tension crackled in the air. Greg's laughter was uncomfortable, echoing off the gallery walls, but Jack pressed on. "I've learned that a rigid approach can create walls, but what if we began to tear them down?" Greg's smirk faltered, a slight crease forming on his brow as he tried to reconcile Jack's words against the backdrop of his own stringent beliefs. "Jack, we have a whole quarter's performance to think about. Creativity's all well and good, but if we don't open ourselves to new perspectives, we risk stagnation," Jack countered, surprising even himself with the conviction in his voice. "It's about evolving, Greg. For us, as a team." His colleagues exchanged glances, uncertain but intrigued by the uncharacteristic shift in Jack's demeanor. "Interesting thought," Greg replied slowly, a hint of defensive disbelief lacing his articulation. "I suppose we'll see how that plays out in the next meeting." Jack felt a thrill rippling through him, intermingling with anxiety. He could almost hear the walls around him crack and shift. Would this budding transformation bloom or wilt? A small voice in his mind whispered panic, but he pushed it down. "Actually, I think it's worth prioritizing those meetings differently," Jack said, a note of bravado surfacing. "Maybe we should brainstorm out of a conference room for a change, let the environment inspire ideas." A silence settled, weighty with implications. He glanced at Emma, and a wave of gratitude rolled through him as he realized he was moving in tandem with someone who believed in that very evolution. As Greg recovered, the faint hint of indignation rekindled. "Let us hope you don't lose your way getting lost in all of this creativity stuff." He began to turn away, signaling his colleagues to follow. Jack felt adrift once again, but Emma's steady gaze anchored him. "Jack, don't let him define your path," she urged, her voice soft but resonant. In that moment, the distance between the familiar and the unfamiliar seemed palpable yet exhilarating. He had made the choice to reject conformity, but now the true test awaited: would he have the strength to uphold his newfound resolve? As the gallery light sparked and flickered under shadows of uncertainty, Jack felt one last surge of clarity. He turned back to Emma. "Can I show you something?" he asked, a question not just about the art but about the awakening journey unfolding within them both, and as he stepped deeper into the gallery, momentum surged in his heart. What lay behind the next painting? A new understanding, perhaps a deeper conflict, or even an unexpected revelation. Jack wasn't sure, but the potential felt more alive than ever. Jack felt the electric buzz of the gallery resonating in his veins, a refreshing contrast to the cavernous silence he'd grown accustomed to in the boardroom. Each artwork possessed a unique vibrancy, beckoning him to look closer. Yet it was the presence of Emma that provided the most inspiration, turning a mundane event into an awakening. "Over here," he said, gesturing toward a boldly colored abstract painting that splashed across the wall. It was a cacophony of brush strokes, hues colliding in a wild yet harmonious dance. He leaned closer, feeling its energy draw him in, hoping it could do the same for her. "This piece speaks to the chaos and connection we experience every day." Emma stepped beside him, peering closely, and for a moment, silence transformed into shared contemplation. He could see the spark of curiosity in her eyes. "Do you think creativity in our work could evolve into something like this?" she asked, her voice thoughtful yet probing. Jack hesitated. The question lingered in the air, a challenge disguised as an inquiry. "If we can embrace the chaos, maybe we can discover ways to innovate. To connect. To succeed differently." Emma nodded, but he sensed her skepticism. She was still caught between the world that Greg embodied and the possibilities Jack was trying to birth. "Jack," she began, carefully gauging her words, "there's a lot at stake in the corporate world. You know that, right? This isn't an easy conversation." Despite the weight of her statement, Jack felt emboldened. Greg's taunts echoed dimly, distant, no longer defining his aspirations. "I know there are risks, but staying stagnant is riskier. I'm guiding my team toward something meaningful. Imagine if we harnessed creativity. What if we made people feel valued, not like numbers?" Emma's brow furrowed, uncertainty etched into her features, then illuminated by the glimmers of understanding. "But how do you plan on moving forward? You're suggesting a complete cultural shift." Jack took a deep breath, envisioning the walls around their corporate existence softening, bending under the weight of something more fluid and organic. He pictured brainstorming sessions in parks, art studios buzzing with energy and laughter. "It starts with us. I can gather the team, bring them here, get them excited. It's about trust, Emma. Redefining what success looks like by genuinely engaging with each other." "The moment you suggest that to Greg," she warned, yet her tone lacked the conviction of fear. It carried the weight of a budding realization. He won't take that lightly. Jack let that settle in. He needed to confront this fear not only for himself but for Emma, for the team, for everyone who had been stifled under rigid expectations. His jaw tightened, and resolve pulsated through him like the heartbeat of the vibrant pieces on the gallery wall. "Maybe that's my next step," he said, quiet but unwavering. "I can't let fear of confrontation keep me from unlocking potential. I'll find a way to present this to make them see." As the words left his mouth, clarity washed over him. He wasn't just defending a theory, he was forging a new identity. One where he no longer bent to the likes of Greg, but shaped a unique space for himself and his team. Emma's face lit with a sudden burst of encouragement, and for a moment, he could see that spark of rebellion mirrored in her expression. She believed in him. "Remember, even the most complex pieces can serve as a foundation for something beautiful," she smiled, the warmth in her words strengthening his resolve. The electric sensation buzzed through him again, this time spurring him forward. "Let's talk about how we can present this concept at work." They began strategizing casually, plans formulating between them like colors mixing on a palette. Ideas flowed freely, and with each exchange, Jack felt more grounded in the professional realm he once felt confined to. As they left the gallery, his heart was alight with not just ambition, but a vision of potential and insatiable hunger to reframe everything he thought he knew about leadership and teamwork. Yet even amidst this excitement, an unsettling whisper lingered at the back of his mind: would a cultural revolution truly take root in the conservative soil of the corporate world? Suddenly, Gregory appeared in the gallery entrance, his characteristic smirk reappearing as he spotted Jack and Emma deep in conversation. The moment stretched taut, tension palpable and undeniable. Jack's determination surged. This was the moment of truth. Would he boldly confront the disdain of his colleague or retreat into the shadows once more? The stakes were higher than ever, and Jack knew that whatever came next would define not only his professional journey but the very essence of his newfound self. Jack stood at the threshold of transformation, heart racing as he faced the duality of his past and his burgeoning future. In that moment, he recognized the profound potential for personal and professional growth that lay before him. The electric buzz of the gallery still coursed through his veins, igniting a fire that was all too palpable in the presence of Emma. She had become the embodiment of his aspirations, someone who recognized not just his corporate guise but the man yearning to break free from the confines of expectation. With Greg's sneer hovering like a cloud, Jack made a decision that felt instinctive yet exhilarating. "Greg," he called out, drawing the attention of both Emma and the approaching colleague. "I think we need to talk about innovation, not just with numbers and reports but how we engage and inspire our teams." Jack felt the words catalyze something within him, a powerful reiteration of his path. This was about more than just a conversation, it was a commitment. The shock on Greg's face was everything Jack had hoped for, a fusion of disbelief and intrigue. "You're serious?" Greg scoffed, his derisive tone attempting to undermine the new resolution Jack felt growing within. "And you believe that creativity can really drive results?" Each word fired back like an arrow, but Jack stood firm, no longer the passive observer of his own life. "Absolutely," Jack affirmed, surprising even himself with the confidence in his assertion. "Creativity fosters connection, leading to genuine buy-in from our team. In return, we'll achieve results that resonate, not just on spreadsheets but within our culture." He turned to Emma, hoping her unwavering gaze would engulf him with strength. The warmth he felt under her scrutiny fueled his resolve. "Then tell me, Jack," Greg challenged, a glimmer of skepticism in his eyes, "how do you plan to implement this creative approach?" Jack inhaled deeply, the weight of challenge swirling around him. "It begins with trust," he ventured, pitching himself into uncharted waters. "I'll present a new strategy. Instead of conventional meetings, let us brainstorm in environments that inspire the gallery, parks, or spaces where we'll feel free to explore. And I want your input, Greg, I need your input." Greg's demeanor shifted, tension tightening in the air. "You want me to endorse this uninhibited approach?" "I'm not asking for a blanket endorsement," Jack clarified, embodying the commitment he felt to establishing a paradigm shift, "but I am asking for an open mindset. The corporate model we abide by is stifling, and I'm willing to stand behind this change not just for us but for the teams relying on us." The room fell silent, anticipation crackling like static electricity. Jack could see the undeniable shift in the expressions around him, a recognition of his bold maneuver. Emma's eyes brimmed with respect and gratitude. Even though Greg stood looming before him, measuring Jack's unwavering intentions, the spark ignited between Jack and Emma lay firmly within him now, as his true self began to manifest in shadows of vulnerability and strength. "Well, I appreciate your creativity, Jack," Greg said, his tone belittling yet wavering. "Just remember, results over sentiment. It won't be that simple." "I'm aware it won't be easy," Jack retorted, grounding the words with conviction. "But from this moment on, I'm ready to redefine what success looks like." He stood relying on every ounce of courage he had amassed over the last weeks, the decisions made crafted with Emma's unwavering support in mind. Jack turned towards Emma, the thrill of this revelation enveloping him again. "Now, let us take it forward," he urged, a newfound vigor surging through him. Hours later, Jack folded his arms around Bella as she shared her dreams of painting the sky with colors never imagined in her young, imaginative mind. A newfound perspective washed over him. He would make sure she grew up knowing the importance of creativity, courage, and authenticity. The dichotomy of his previous life and this new chapter lingered in every moment, but now, the balance felt achievable. Days crystallized into a rhythm as Jack actively reinvented his approach at work, integrating creative brainstorming sessions that transformed corporate culture from rigid to fluid. He enveloped his team within an inspiring narrative, one they could own together, bridging gaps and dismantling barriers that had long suffocated their unity. Soon, he became known not only for profits but for something much deeper, a leader who recognized the necessity for connection. His colleagues began to acknowledge his transformation, intrigued by the authenticity of his vision. Even Greg found himself cautiously complimenting Jack's growing influence, albeit vulnerability still lingering in his heart. In this newfound space, Jack gradually crafted a professional legacy intertwined with the values of growth and authenticity, a success paved by encouragement and creativity, all the while ensuring Bella would see her father not as a mere CEO, but as one who truly lived. As Jack and Emma strolled through a local art exhibit, laughter and connection infused their newfound bond, echoing that first coffee date amidst shared hopes and understanding. The challenges had not vanished, but Jack felt fortified for every dip and rise, emboldened by experience and guided by the nurturing hand of love he neither dared to expect nor take for granted. The adventure ahead pulsed with promise, each step driven by courage, creativity, and an unparalleled sense of fulfillment. Jack now floated between his past, present, and future, the once estranged trajectory now woven into revealing connections. They weren't mere barriers, but invitations to truly explore the life he had fought to embrace. As he prepared to venture into another meeting, he smiled, knowing he wasn't just surviving, he was thriving, and this journey had only just begun. And now, dear friends, if you found Jack's transformation inspiring, you need to subscribe immediately to our channel. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and energize more incredible stories like Jack's. Comment below with your thoughts on this conclusion. What did you think about Jack's journey? And most importantly, share this video instantly with 5 friends who need to see this powerful transformation. Don't wait even one more second, your support matters.